We've been talking about the Torah. This is step 6 in the Gospel of Romans, Romans 12 through 13. The question now falls, okay, so how do you get started on learning the Torah? And for the answer to this, we're going to turn to Acts 15. Acts 15, and the crux of the matter we find in verses 19 through 20. In Acts 15, the question is, do the Gentiles who are coming into the congregation, do they have to learn the Torah up front before they enter the congregation, or do they enter the congregation first and then learn the Torah gradually later on? And of course, this passage has been misinterpreted by Christianity to say that it teaches against the Torah, but we're going to see that it is not saying that at all. Verses 19 through 20 reads, "Therefore I judge that we should not burden those from among the Gentiles who are turning to God, except that they abstain from food sacrificed to idols, and from fornication, and from what is strangled, and from blood." So here are 4 commands that the new Gentiles, baby believers, need to learn up front. This is the beginning of their instruction in Torah. Now, these are some kind of strange items. Christianity interprets this passage to mean that you are not saved by doing the law, but rather you're saved by believing in Jesus. Nothing in here about believing in Jesus. If it's talking about salvation, then what it is saying is that if you do these 4 things, you're going to be saved. But it's not talking about salvation. It's talking about whether we're doing the Torah up front or gradually after we get in. So when you come in, you'll notice that 3 of these items have to do with food. And so the food issue comes up right at the beginning. Why? Because as a baby believer going to the meetings, you are going to be sharing a meal, which means you're going to be bringing food. Now, there are specific commands in the Torah concerning what you can eat and what you can't eat. And so they have to explain some of this stuff right up front so that you are not bringing stuff that is going to be a problem for people eating the meal. Now, if you bring shrimp, people are going to say, well, that shrimp, I'm not going to eat it, right? So that's not mentioned in here, even though that is against the commands in the Torah. But what is mentioned is food that's sacrificed to idols, food that is strangled, and from blood. In other words, the things that you can't see readily that you would have in your meat, those things are things that you need to be concerned with, and then learn the rest of the dietary laws gradually as you will. Now, so blood is obviously one of the things that we're not supposed to be doing. It's something that can be hidden very easily in food that you would bring, and so you need to know that up front. The other item that is mentioned is fornication. In Gentile society, fornication is legal. Fornication is not considered to be bad. And so we have to tell people up front that you can't do that. So that there is you don't have these kind of problems, obviously, is going to be a problem right up front. Now, here's a question for you. How come murder is not mentioned? Is it okay to murder as a baby believer? Well, there are 4 commands that are part of the basic laws in the early sections of Genesis that Gentiles already know is wrong. Okay? Gentiles know that murder is wrong. They may have a problem with some of the details in terms of abortion and so forth, but basically they understand that murder is wrong. They understand that theft is wrong. Blasphemy is an interesting item that's on this list. Blasphemy is actually referring to hypocrisy. And this is something that unbelievers know is wrong. They look at Christian televangelists and they say, hypocrite, he's just there for the money. So they know that's wrong, right? And and we need to continue in those things. Obeying human authority is another one. They know that you're supposed to be doing that, and so we don't have to tell you up front because you should already know that. So if you get all of those items plus the ones that are mentioned in here, then you are, as a baby believer, good enough to start meeting in the congregation with the rest of the people. You're not going to cause a problem with the rest of the people in the meeting. Food sacrificed to idols is an interesting one. There is no command in the Torah saying that we're not supposed to eat food that has been sacrificed to idols. Okay, obviously we're not supposed to be doing idolatry, but this specific part of the thing is not mentioned in there. So why is it mentioned here? Well, in those days they had a real problem, because if you went to a restaurant in town in these Greek and Roman areas, the food that you were eating was sacrificed in the temple next door. The temple had a restaurant. They would get food in from to be sacrificed to their god, and then they would cut it up and sell it in their restaurant. And so they'd make profit on it twice, and which meant that they could sell it cheap and put out all the legitimate restaurants were put out of business. So that was your only option. If you wanted to eat out, you had to eat at the temple restaurant, and and that means that if you were a former pagan and you saw somebody from your congregation eating there, then you would be tempted to get back into idolatry because you used to eat there as a part of your idolatry. And so we don't do that in order to not tempt people. And this is explained later on. Now, the next verse after these 2 verses is very important. Let's read it. This is Acts 15:21. For Moses has had throughout many generations those who preach him in every city, being read in the synagogues every Shabbat. Now Moses refers to the Torah. Okay, Moses wrote the Torah. So when he says reading Moses, it means reading the Torah. And if you go to a synagogue on Saturday, you can learn about the Torah. And when they went to these Greek areas and they had these Gentile congregations, there was nobody there who could teach them Torah. But they did have a synagogue in their city, probably, and where they could learn it. Now, why is this verse here if you're not supposed to do the Torah? It doesn't make any sense. Okay? The only reason to have this verse here is because you are expected to learn the Torah. As a new believer, you're supposed to start learning the Torah. And you're supposed to finish it up eventually. And be doing it eventually. Okay? And this is how you are supposed to be learning. So you start with these 4 simple things to start with, and then you progress gradually. And that's how you get started on the Torah. So we learned that we're supposed to make a commitment to the Torah. If we're doing if we are willing to do the 4 responsibilities, then we're not going to have a problem with any of the commands in the Torah as we study them. We start here with these 4 commands in addition to the things that we already know are wrong. And then we start gradually learning Torah. And we can do that in the synagogue, or we can learn that in a Messianic congregation. And that's why I'm doing the videos on Torah, so that you can learn Torah gradually as a part of your study. So that's how you start. And God makes everything simple. We're supposed to be taking baby steps. If you take baby steps and you keep going, as the song says, you can get all the way across the floor. And that means that God requires of you some simple thing in order to reach out and get His gift. The Torah is a gift. The Torah is the way that we work with each other without rubbing each other the wrong way. The Torah is the way that we get close to God. If you want to get close to God, if you want to get close to people, the Torah is the way to do it. Anything else is going to cause problems. And so this is a gift to us to help us so that we're not causing problems. And that's what hell is all about. Hell is about you're so obnoxious that you can't be around anybody else. And everybody else in there is just as obnoxious. So they can't be around anybody else. And then they're all stuck together so that they rub each other the wrong way forever. You know, that's what hell is all about. And why? Because they're not willing to learn the Torah. And that's it. That's it. We are learning the Torah so that we can go to heaven and get along with each other and have a wonderful relationship with people and with God. Okay, so that's the Torah. And like I said, if you go into Appendix 3, it gives most of the objection passages that anybody could think of. If you have an objection passage that is a concern of yours, you'll find it in Appendix 3. So Torah, we need to start simply, do one little thing, and then learn these 4 things up front, and so that we can eat together and get along together, and then learn the rest of the Torah on a gradual basis and eventually get to the place where we're not obnoxious anymore.